Okay, I know we've probably got a lot to get through today, so I'm going to start by sharing a few things about the partnership, in case you guys aren't already aware, how we're able to have this great lunch and learn today. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. There's our beautiful Vermont Agricultural Water Quality Partnership logo, and that who is helping sponsor the Lunch and Learn webinar series that we're going to have for the next three Wednesdays. So here's a little background on the partnership. I'm not going to read through it all. You're all welcome to go look at the VAWQP website and you can see our strategic plan where this information has been pulled from. But basically, we're just trying to help connect people in the agricultural water quality field and enable learning opportunities like this today. In the partnership, we have all these wonderful partners. Ali is really good at explaining all of these partners and saying all the names. I'll just say, here are our partners here listed with the logos. I also realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Julia King with the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts. Ali Wells, the VAWQP coordinator, is currently on family medical leave, so I'm taking over for her in the meantime. So pardon any differences. And then I just wanted to give a reminder that registration is now open for our annual meeting on Tuesday, March 31st, and you can register at vacd.org/VACWUP, and that's going to be open until March 11th, so please register for that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think there are people still stuck in the waiting room. Pardon our Zoom issues, but we're really excited today to have Matt Marcelino with VACD presenting this three-part GIS workshop series. So I'm going to pass it over to Matt. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room and in the chat if anything comes up.
Sounds good. Just gonna share my screen real quick. Can everybody hear me okay?
Sounds good.
Yes, yeah.
Great. Let's see. And I'm assuming people can see this screen now.
Yes, we can.
Great. Alrighty. So yeah, I'm Matt Marcelino. I'm the GIS specialist with VACD. During this presentation, feel free to ask any questions during the presentation. I'll also have some time after the presentation for any questions. For some reason, I can't see anybody's faces right now, so if somebody could just speak out or speak up, that would be helpful for me to know that somebody's asking a question. But essentially, yeah, I have this three-part webinar series that is organized to hopefully give you an introduction to some of the whys of why we use GIS and leading into some data management stuff in the next webinar to mapping and visualization. So yeah, feel free to reach out at any point, like I said, during this presentation. And also my email address is right there on the screen too. So please feel free to reach out to me at any point if you have any questions about GIS. And I'm very, very happy to help out with anything that you may need help with. So as a brief introduction, why is GIS important in conservation and agriculture? And ultimately, what it comes down to is that GIS allows people to visualize and analyze data to help solve spatial problems, as well as make smarter, more robust and defensible decisions, along with many more uses as well. And as I said in this webinar, I'm hoping that we're going to learn the fundamental components and capabilities of GIS and discover how GIS can help organizations address whatever their needs may be. So I'm hoping that you're going to understand concepts fundamental to GIS use, and I'm also hoping to convey how ArcGIS in particular can enable organizations to meet their complex needs. So what is GIS? I think to start off, I wanted to just go along and explain some of the basics. So GIS is what we're probably used to hearing, but it's just an abbreviation that it stands for Geographic Information Systems, which are systems that have different configurations, functions, and applications, but their core implementation is the same. So a geographic information system is essentially a framework for gathering, managing, and analyzing data. So it's rooted in the science of geography. And ultimately, at its core, it provides a way for us to create, manage, visualize, analyze, and interpret geospatial data. So through its unique capabilities, GIS can uncover rich information from data such as relationships, patterns, situations, among many, many others, which will help you or others which will enable you or others to make and justify smarter decisions for whatever decision making processes you're trying to accomplish. So a good real world example of this would be to include GIS in helping farmers better understand the details of their operation by allowing them to track management initiatives on their farm. Additionally, they could use GIS to upload water quality sampling results or soil data, which farmers can then visualize in real time. Additionally, farmers can also use drone footage or satellite imagery of their fields to help them see things such as slope, potential erosion points, among many, many others. So this information can be critical for farmers to ensure that their soil and or their crops aren't going to be affected by things like flooding or any other things that may pop up. So this is just one example, but there are a lot of real world examples where GIS is invaluable to conservation outcomes, which we will talk about a little bit in this webinar, but also in the other webinars as well. So essentially, GIS is important to understand what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen in a particular geographic area. So it helps solve spatial problems using geographic understanding so that we can make better decisions about the issues we face both on global scales and local scales, and even on micro scales as well in some cases. So a little bit of the more boring stuff, but I think it's important to understand the components of GIS or geographic information systems. But essentially, it's providing you with tools to help you solve your spatial problems. So typically, or it is made up of 5 components, which include hardware, software, data, people, and workflows, all of which we will talk about here in a few moments. But essentially, if you hear the term GIS, you're going to see these 5 components, and they're all going to be very valuable to whatever you are doing and whatever you're trying to accomplish. So the first component, hardware, is simply what it sounds like. It's essentially centralized computer servers, computers, handheld devices. So it could be an iPhone, it could be an iPad, laptop, so on and so forth. And essentially, the hardware is where the GIS is being implemented on. So this gives the ability to create, share, and use geographic information with these devices. The next component is software. So GIS software provides the function and tools needed to store, analyze, and display geographic information, or geographic data rather. So the software is essentially providing the tools needed to input, manipulate, and to query any of the geographic data that you have. The software that I'm going to be referring to today is going to be in reference to ArcGIS, just because that's what we use at VACD and NRCS, and many different organizations also use ArcGIS, and it's a really great system. But there are others out there as well, like QGIS and other GIS softwares as well. The next component is data, and GIS data is data that contains location information such as addresses, postal codes, and XY coordinate locations. So essentially, a GIS manages and integrates geographic information with data from other sources to help perform visualizations and analyses and the sharing of geographic information with other people. And we'll talk about data types in the next webinar, but it's important to note that GIS and especially ArcGIS has a lot of functionality when it comes to data manipulation and use. The next component is people. So people use software or GIS software to perform tasks on geographic data, and might include people like administrators, analysts, cartographers, and field workers. So all sorts of people use GIS. It's not always professionals, and oftentimes people who are using GIS don't specialize in it, but rely heavily on it for their needs. So I think that a GIS provides very little value without people to manage the system and develop plans to actually apply the data to real world problems. The next component is workflows. So a GIS typically has workflows that are composed of unique structured plans and rules. And essentially what workflows do is it allows for improved efficiency by defining processes and repeatable tasks. So oftentimes organizations will develop these workflows for those reasons. There are many different types of workflows. This is just a very basic one that's shown on screen. But essentially, they're typically going to start with some type of question that you are trying to answer, which is going to lead typically to a list of questions. And then once you have those questions that you need answered, you're going to start the data acquisition process, which is an iterative process that can go through different steps and can help you refine your data sets and your analyses, which we'll talk about in the next webinar as well. But once you typically have your data set in place and you do your analyses, that's when you're going to start creating your products that are going to assist with your decision making or communicating your findings. So things like maps, reports, articles. You can even make websites that rely on GIS, and then you're going to typically distribute that data regardless of if that is within your organization or to a broader stakeholder base. Okay, so those are the 5 components of a GIS. So let's talk a little bit about geographic information, because it is the whole point of a GIS, and it's typically made up of 2 types of information, so attribute or attributes and location. So attributes are going to describe non-location information, such as maybe ID numbers, names, and values, regardless of if that is a metric measuring water quality or some type of soil information. And then on the other hand, location is going to describe where an object resides on the Earth and includes XY coordinates, addresses, and points of interest typically. The great thing about GIS and attribute information and location information is that you can combine it to create geographic information that can then be placed on a map. So this is an example that I got from Esri, which is the creators of ArcGIS. But essentially, if you imagine that two friends have decided to meet at each other's house, let's say, was it Paul and George, I think is the example, and they want to meet at Paul's house. To help with navigation, Paul tells Greg tells Greg that he lives in a blue house that is also 1 story high. So although this attribute information gives Greg an idea of what Paul's house looks like, Greg is not necessarily going to be able to find the home without actually having a location component, such as the street address. So when you combine the home's description and the address, it can create geographic information that can then be accurately placed on a map for others to find and use. So that's essentially the whole point of a GIS, is to combine that attribute information with that location information so that you can look at things spatially. And the great thing about geographic information is it can be found in a lot of different formats and within a variety of documents and data sets. So a good example would be that you can find geographic information on legal documents like deeds, personal documents, reports, websites, among many, many others. So pretty much any type of document or data set can be combined with location information so that you can use that data within ArcGIS. What you're seeing on the screen here is real world data that is being represented by a vector data set and a raster data set. We're not going to talk about that now, but those are just two ways of visualizing GIS data essentially. So why use GIS? GIS opens the door to a powerful set of capabilities that enable users to benefit from location-based analytics. And these capabilities give access to rich information through the use of tools that help you visualize and analyze the data. I think this figure here is a really cool figure because it is combining GIS data, or it's visualizing GIS data in a way that can be useful to land use planners or people who are interested in climate change. So what you're seeing here is the Republic of Ireland, and you're seeing in the first figure, you're seeing temperature change over time, and then rainfall change, and then land use change. So there's a lot of different functionality that you can use and superimpose on real world locations that help you make specific decisions. So let's talk a little bit about spatial analytics. So spatial analytics allow individuals to move beyond just exploring the visual aspect of their data to using tools based on spatial algorithms to help identify trends, patterns, as well as relationships in the data. So a good example of this would be a scientist using spatial analytics to monitor the locations of an invasive plant species and to help predict where the species may grow in the future. So there are many different tools within ArcGIS in particular where you can actually predict how an invasive species would spread throughout the environment. So it's a really great tool to help predict things as well as see things happening in real time as well, which we'll talk about in a bit. Field operations is another great capability of GIS. So field operations help enable an organization's office staff and field workers to access the same data sources via mobile devices, which can help reduce reliance on paper-based methods and increase productivity and efficiency. So a good example of this could be somebody who is going out into the field and after a flood looking at road erosion, and they bring their mobile device around, or they bring their mobile device with them. They go and find where roads are eroded. They take some pictures. They upload it to ArcGIS that is connected to a central work order system in the organization. And then once that information is collected, repair crews can be dispatched immediately to fix the issue, or rescue crews could go out and help with that as well. So that connection between you know, being able to go out in the field, upload all of your data on a mobile device, and then not have to retranscribe it onto another piece of paper, or from a piece of paper to a computer, can help reduce errors and also increase efficiency as well. And then, of course, with GIS, there's mapping and visualization, which allows individuals to view data from multiple sources, such as spreadsheets, databases, as well as live data, all on a single map. So a good example of this, again, could be first responders, who could view a list of addresses of individuals that need to be evacuated from a flood zone, along with optimal routes, as well as alternate routes for reaching each destination. And that information could include a priority layer that includes who should be evacuated first due to risks such as flooding or some other type of metric. So GIS can be really valuable in a multitude of responses, regardless of if it's emergency responses to flooding, or maybe you are doing some type of conservation treatments in an area, and you need a way of prioritizing things. So maybe you can use that spatial data and visualization to help you effectively use your resources in an effective way. I talked about this a little bit already, but I'm going to talk about it quickly again. A great capability of GIS is real-time GIS, which you can use to monitor and display data obtained from sensors or devices at specific locations, which can help enable individuals to make real-time decisions. A good example could be ambulances. A dispatcher can see where ambulances are, and if there's some type of car crash or some type of emergency, they can see who's located where and effectively control the situation and get the closest ambulance or first responder to the scene of the accident, and to help take care of things in a fast and effective way. Another great capability of GIS is 3D GIS, or three-dimensional GIS, which transforms 2D data into 3D models, which can be used to bring a real-world context to maps and provide new ways to add dimensionality to data for both visualization purposes and analyses. So a good example could be a planner could use a 3D building model or tree and landscape elevation model, along with the sun's location, to determine how shadows from a building or landscape could affect fields, or whether or not topography may impact soil erosion, or areas that would be of interest for nutrient loading or anything of that nature. So a lot of great capabilities with 3D GIS, specifically in the agricultural and water quality sector as well. And then, of course, one great thing with GIS is it allows you to use imagery and remote sensing. So these provide tools and workflows that individuals can use to extract information from imagery or remotely sense data, regardless of if that is from a satellite or UAV. A good example of this is a forester collecting imagery of an area and extracting land cover classifications from the imagery data, where then the forester could then analyze that information to help determine the vegetation types in that area or to see whether or not an invasive species is present, so on and so forth. You could also use this as a great means of tracking river channel movements or erosion of riverbanks, so on and so forth. So very, very powerful tool within GIS is its ability to use imagery and remote sensing quite easily and effectively. And then, of course, GIS is great for data collection. I've talked about this a little bit already, but it has a lot of data collection and management functionality, which allows individuals to access, use, integrate, and store data within a GIS. So once again, using those mobile devices to collect data about a piece of property, and then that data can be stored in a database and accessed by others within the organization. So it's a really great way of collecting and sharing data as well. Another great aspect of GIS and another type of GIS is WebGIS, which has a lot of benefits. So a WebGIS is a type of distributed information system that's made up of a GIS server and a client, such as a web browser, a desktop application like ArcGIS Pro, or some type of mobile application. And it's being used to connect users to maps, data, and tools. And it's really, really beneficial, and we'll talk about why here now. So WebGIS can benefit organizations in a lot of ways. There are many, many different ways that it benefits organizations, but the main five that I think about is that WebGIS can be used by a broad audience, including public users who may know nothing about GIS. So WebGIS is commonly designed for simplicity, intuition, and convenience. So it can be used in conjunction with volunteers who may not know much about GIS, but can be trained to intuitively input data points. I think a good example of that is something like iNaturalist, which people upload photos all the time and are using GIS data to help track wildlife and plants and other cool things across the world. It also allows everyone, no matter what their location is, to access geographic information, which helps improve collaboration among organizations, teams, as well as the public. And another great thing about WebGIS is it can be used by dozens or even hundreds of users simultaneously, whereas only desktop GIS can only be used by one person at a time. So WebGIS really allows for many different people to work on using the same data or similar data at the same time, which is really, really great for a lot of organizations. It also enables you to access data from various sources to meet your specific project needs. So there are a lot of different GIS data sources available online, regardless of if that's on ArcGIS Online or the Vermont Center for Geographic or the Vermont Geospatial portal. I can't quite remember exactly what the name of it is, but it's a great resource. And I think lastly, WebGIS can be applied at any scale, from an individual collecting data for a small project to multiple organizations collaborating together to develop a global solution. So to sum it up, with WebGIS, content can be accessed, used, and shared no matter the user's skill level or location, and the number of users. And there's a lot of different data sources, and you can use it at a bunch of different project scales. So it's a really, really great tool to use WebGIS. So I'm going to briefly talk about ArcGIS products that are available. I'm not sure if everybody has access, who is watching this has access to ArcGIS, but that is the system that a lot of organizations use and is really valuable. And there's a lot of resources out there too, as far as tutorials go, and a lot of great free YouTube videos that you can really improve your ArcGIS skills with. There are other things like QGIS as well out there as well, but as I said, I'm going to talk about ArcGIS. And all that ArcGIS is that it's a system that was created, or it's an ecosystem that was created by Esri that is essentially our way of taking advantage of GIS capabilities. So by using ArcGIS products, it's fairly easy to create, manage, share, visualize, and analyze spatial data. And the three major components of ArcGIS that we typically use include things like ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro, and ArcGIS mobile apps. So let's talk a little bit about ArcGIS Online real quick. So it's a cloud-based web GIS for mapping and analysis that can be used anytime and anywhere, as long as you have access to some type of mobile device and an internet connection. So you can use it on your phone, you can use it on a tablet, on a computer, you can use it anywhere. And it's really great because it enables you to connect to people, locations, and data using interactive maps. So these maps can then be used to share insight with specific groups within your organization or outside of your organization to the wider world. So it's a really great resource. And if you haven't looked at ArcGIS Online, I would highly recommend it. It's a really wonderful, easy to use system. So definitely check it out. In my opinion, ArcGIS Pro, though, is perhaps the most valuable component of any of the ArcGIS products. It's next in line after ArcMap. So maybe a lot of you have a lot of experience with ArcMap and not so much with ArcGIS Pro. I think that ArcMap is not going to be widely available in the near future. So I think getting experience and learning how to use ArcGIS Pro will be very valuable. And I will talk about ArcGIS Pro later on as well. But essentially, it's a desktop application that provides tools for data management, visualization, and analysis of 2D and 3D data. It has advanced cartographic tools that allow you to make these really beautiful maps for print, for maps for various apps or dashboards, and even maps that you can use on the web. So the beauty of ArcGIS Pro as well is it's really closely integrated within the ArcGIS ecosystem, which allows for easy sharing of data across ArcGIS Online as well. The last category I'll talk about when it comes to ArcGIS is mobile apps. And remember how I showed this right here. All of these, I believe, are apps of some sort from ArcGIS. And these apps provide lots of tools to help navigate routes, collect data, track location, share information, and many, many, many more. So I highly encourage you to check out all those apps. I think the most important thing about them, though, is that these mobile apps help support field activities in connected or disconnected environments. So in environments that have internet connections and in environments that don't have internet connection. I think a good example of this is another example that I got off of as from ArcGIS, showing that the Esri ArcGIS ecosystem is really, really powerful. It can be used in many different ways across a variety of organizations. And a good example of this could be a fictional land conservation organization that is responsible for overseeing hundreds of conservation areas where they need to monitor each site to ensure that it remains protected. So this type of project would require a great deal of data collection and management. And in this hypothetical situation, this company is going to use ArcGIS to help capitalize on the benefits that are being offered by WebGIS. So in this hypothetical example, field workers are monitoring the state of each conservation area, and they're using ArcGIS mobile apps to help them collect photos and descriptions of each area's current on-site conditions. So this can include things like water quality, soil core data, so on and so forth. Once they collect that information using mobile apps, they are able to sync it up with ArcGIS online. And if they have internet connection while doing this, it'll actually sync with ArcGIS online in real time, which can then be viewed instantly by people in the office without having to wait for field workers to return and transcribe data and then upload it to whatever system it's going to live in. So it's a really powerful tool for quickly inputting data and managing data as well. So ultimately, the mobile apps allow for more efficient data collection and management as compared with the paper forms and the manual data entry that has previously been used. Obviously, manual data entry can be really effective. However, when you remove the paper forms, and just input the data directly into ArcGIS, it can help for quicker and less error-prone data entry compared to transcribing the forms a second time into a computer. Additionally, this group could use ArcGIS web-based dashboards to monitor the fieldwork team, and they could do this with little to no GIS experience. So this type of thing allows for project leaders to easily track each worker's location as well as view the data being collected either in real time or almost in real time. So it's a really great ecosystem that allows for efficient project management tracking as well. And then lastly, ArcGIS Pro can be used to perform analyses on the collected data. You can do analyses within ArcGIS Online, but ArcGIS Pro is really the real powerhouse when it comes to analyzing spatial data. So these analyses could be land use analyses that are used to create map layouts of preservation areas, which can then be shared as story maps with stakeholders like government, governmental representations, local businesses, scientists, so on and so forth. So it's a really great system that I highly recommend using if you have access to it, because it just makes the whole project management workflow extremely simple and cost effective, especially when a lot of organizations are understaffed these days. So saving 15 minutes here and there can be really, really valuable for staffing concerns. I think One of the most powerful things about ArcGIS is that it can be used to integrate a wide variety of data that can be added within ArcGIS as layers. So as long as your data has some type of spatial component, so a field containing spatial information like addresses, postal codes, or XY coordinates, you can use it in ArcGIS. Additionally, ArcGIS can accept data in many different formats. It can accept CSV files, Excel files, JSON files, text files, among many, many others. So it's a very powerful and user-friendly spatial tool. I think one of the great things about ArcGIS as well is its capability of using maps to help improve decision making. So by integrating data into a GIS, it allows you to use spatial tools to visualize data on the map, which can give you information that you need to make and justify the decisions that you're making, or at least provide evidence to help influence decision making, regardless of if you're trying to convey information to legislators or landowners. It's really powerful when you can actually see the reasoning behind the recommendations that you're making on a physical map. So when it comes to maps, when it comes to ArcGIS maps, there are a variety of ways that you can present the map. The two primary presentation formats are static and dynamic maps, which we'll talk about here in a second. However, you can also make these things called story maps, which can help you lay out a narrative that can more effectively guide people through a project in a really effective way. Groups like Lewis Creek Association have used these quite extensively and to communicate water quality issues as well as wildlife connectivity issues as well. So they're really great at providing a lot of context to the spatial data that you are using and trying to help people understand what you're trying to accomplish. So static maps are maps that you can view, but you cannot interact with. So an example would be either a printed map uh, or a digital or a digital map like a PDF document or a JPEG. So essentially, these are maps that you can either hang on a wall or a board, or you can send it to somebody via email, or can even be downloaded from a website. Whereas a dynamic map is a map that you can view and interact with online. So examples of these would be web maps and web apps. And these types of maps can be used to interactively explore locations by clicking or tapping the map, depending on the device you're using. Clicking if you're using a computer, probably tapping if you're using a phone or a tablet. But you can choose the information that you want people to see as well with these dynamic maps. And we'll talk about both static and dynamic maps in another webinar. But I wanted to make you aware of those real quick. And the last thing I'll talk about today is sharing your data and your maps. So if you decide to present your map as an interactive web map or web app, or if you simply just need to share data, you can use WebGIS to share all of this information across your organization. So this capability allows other users to discover and use the data that you've created and analyze for both collaboration and decision making. And the most common way that organizations do that and share their GIS information is through ArcGIS Online. The other great thing about ArcGIS Online is you can choose who has access to your content. So whether that's people inside your organization, people in other organizations, or the public. So maybe you have, a trail map that is widely available and you're willing to share that with the general public. You can choose that. Or maybe you have a map that is showing the locations of rare or threatened species, and you can choose who sees that as well. You can either choose an entire organization, choose whether or not an entire organization can see that data, or you can choose specific individuals within your team to see that information. So there's a lot of usability and functionality when it comes to sharing and choosing who you're sharing your data and maps with GIS. So that's all I have for this webinar. I would love to answer any questions if people have them. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat, but people feel free to raise your hand, go off mute, or put a question in the chat.
Hi, Matt. Thanks. This is Emily from Caledonia District. I'm wondering about the content of the next two webinars. Like, I think it's really hard to have a GIS webinar series that meets everyone's needs and like assumes, because you have to assume some knowledge, but not too much. And yeah, I totally get that. But I feel like my level of knowledge is not unique, which is like enough to be dangerous, but not enough to like do anything effective. So I'm curious if the next series, the next two webinars will sort of like walk us through examples of like, here's how GIS matches with like, yeah, and I understand this is a Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnership sponsored webinar, so it's like more ag related, but like, the way that I want to think about using GIS is in project development and natural resources projects. So like, say you have a project, like how do you like I can't even like I maybe could, but it would take me way too long. I can't even like make a map like of
Mhm.
I could, but like it would take me way too long to do it. So I'm wondering, yeah, just curious like what the plan is for the next couple webinars in terms of skills, applicable skills.
Yeah, so the ultimate goal of these webinars is to provide essentially uh, a launching point, I suppose, and my thought process behind them is to build off of each other. So the next one will be talking about data management and kind of going over like the backgrounds or the backgrounds of how GIS data is structured so that you can use it effectively. And then the next one is going to be more about the map stuff, and which is going to go more into some of the important, the different types of maps you can use and make, as well as um, how to display data and stuff like that. It's not none of these are going to be actual tutorials per se. That being said, I do think it could be beneficial to have a tutorial, and am willing to do tutorials where we just literally walk through making a map together. I don't know if this uh, location VAWQP is that place for that, but it could be, in my opinion, if people want that. That being said, I'm looking for ways that are going to benefit everybody within the various conservation organizations, and essentially, if you guys have ideas of what you would like to see and any workshops that you would like to see, I'm happy to do whenever as well.
Thanks, Matt. I can't speak onto providing future tutorials, but I wrote it down to bring up with partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it would be really beneficial, especially because I know a lot of people are used to ArcMap, and instead of ArcGIS Pro as well. And it's they're very similar in nature, but there are some differences. And I know for folks who are used to ArcMap, that making that transition is a little bit scary as well. And so I'm happy to facilitate those types of things as well.
So I see in the comments that everyone's agreeing that they have some trouble making maps, it seems like. Any other questions people have based on what was presented today?
Yeah, and Matt, I also want to acknowledge, like, I took GIS in grad school. Like, I totally get that there's like all this other stuff that if you don't know it, you can like really mess some stuff up.
Yeah.
So, like, it's hard in a series like this to like provide everything that people
Yeah.
need. Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, GIS is a whole course in a lot of places, so finding that balance is tough. But yeah, I agree though. I think as one of the comments is saying, making a map, put some dots on it and basic layers, yeah, is really valuable. And yeah, I have time before the third one as well, so I could potentially adjust things as well to get into that as well. So yeah, I want to help you all and be as beneficial to you as possible. So yeah, I appreciate that feedback.
And maybe to save Matt some time and not reinvent the wheel, I hope everybody's aware of Esri's website, and there's tons of free training materials that goes micro to macro. So that's a possibility for everybody as well.
Yeah, I'll paste that link in the chat too, because that's a great point. It's a really great resource.
Yeah, I think assistance sorting through that resource too could be really useful because, like, yeah, there's tons of resources, but like, I don't even know which one to click or which one would actually be helpful for what, like, the types of products that we find ourselves being asked for. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I'll send out a survey too of asking people what types of projects and types of maps are looking to make, because that would help me tremendously to show or to figure out what you all need. So yeah, thanks for that comment.
Other questions from the group?
Are there ever any permissions challenges with sharing out? I'm thinking particularly about the GIS online. I feel like in the past, folks who are better than me at GIS have made maps, and then when we've tried to like post it or share it, it seems like some of the functionalities, like depending on licensing and such, can you speak to that, or like any like pitfalls that one might run into with like your license versus someone else's license?
Yeah, I'm not too so I'm fairly new to this role with VACD, so I'm not entirely sure what all of your licenses look like, but licenses can impact a lot of functionality when it comes to ArcGIS stuff. And obviously different organizations have different requirements of what you can and cannot share. I'm not sure exactly what constraints your organization would have, but if you are making a map and trying to share it on ArcGIS Online, usually the functionality that you have from what you make will typically be there. So I'm not really sure without seeing what you're referring to, what a solution would be for that. But yeah, essentially, typically speaking, when you're making maps and stuff like that, if you can see it and it's a publicly accessible, shareable layer, then people should be able to see it. Maybe some of the layers that you used have permissions for people within specific organizations. So if that wasn't available to other people, if it wasn't shared to other people, then that might have contributed to that issue. But yeah, it's hard to say specifically without seeing the specific instance.
Hard to see if anyone has a question when you all have your cameras off. Teacher mode in me is like wanting to call on people, but maybe you don't have questions today. I'll do one last call if anyone's got another question. No. Okay. Well, as Matt said, and I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to be a three-part series. So we'll be meeting next Wednesday and the Wednesday after at the same time from noon to 1. It's the exact same Zoom link. I took down all of your names and I have all your emails. If Matt ends up wanting to send out a survey, we can be in touch with you. And the final call to please register for the VAWQP annual meeting if you want to go. We've got almost 90 people registered right now, which is very exciting. And this recording I should have up by the end of the week. So I'll send that out with the reminder for next week's training as well. Any last parting words, Matt?
Yeah, thanks for your time. I appreciate your interest in this topic. And yeah, I will try to remember to create a survey and hopefully get it out to you all. And maybe we can go through a map making tutorial together if there's interest in that. So yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.